We got called to a vineyard fire at 2 in the morning, not a big one. Someone had tried to set fire to the grapevines on the eastern edge of the property. When we pulled up, police were already there, restraining a woman who was screaming at the owner. She was sobbing, clawing at the officers, makeup running down her face. The man who owned the vineyard stood 30 feet away, watching, arms crossed, completely calm, like he'd been expecting this. The fire was small, contained. We put it out in minutes, but something about the way that man stood there, the way he looked at that woman, told me this fire had been burning a lot longer than just tonight. Let me tell you how this fire really started. The man's name was Nathan, the woman trying to burn his vineyard. That was his sister, Claire. And by the time we'd cleared the scene and sent the police off with her in handcuffs, Nathan was still standing in the same spot, just watching the smoke clear. I asked him if he was okay. He smiled. Said he was better than he'd been in years. Then he told me everything. Nathan grew up as the shadow in his family. His sister Claire was the golden one, the star, the scholar, the miracle child who could do no wrong. Nathan, he was the mistake they tolerated. When he brought home straight A's, his parents said Claire did that in middle school. When he got into college on a scholarship, they said, "At least we don't have to pay for you." The only person who ever looked at Nathan like he was worth something was his grandfather, Henry. Henry owned this vineyard, ran it for 50 years, and he and Nathan would sit under the old oak tree out back, talking about roots, about how roots remember what people forget. When Henry died, Nathan's mother, Diane, told him, "He loved you out of pity." Nathan was 28 when the will was read. They all gathered in the lawyer's mahogany-paneled office. Nathan, his parents, his sister. The lawyer started reading, and before he even finished the first line, Diane leaned back in her chair, smirking, like she'd already won something. "Go on," she said. "Read it. Let's all hear how much your father's disappointment gets." The lawyer cleared his throat. "To my grandson Nathan, I leave $1. The room went silent. Then Diane laughed, sharp, satisfied. Claire covered her mouth to hide her smile. Nathan's father, Richard, just muttered, "Fitting." Nathan didn't move, didn't blink, didn't give them the pleasure of seeing him break. The lawyer kept reading. To Claire, Henry left $6.9 million. The vineyard property had been sold years earlier behind Henry's back. The money, the investments, everything went to Claire. They toasted themselves. Champagne, crocodile tears, fake grief. Claire even leaned over and whispered to Nathan, "Guess he finally saw your true worth." But Nathan noticed something. When the lawyer closed the file, he didn't leave. He looked at Nathan, not them. And he slid a small sealed envelope across the table. "Your grandfather instructed me to give you this privately," the lawyer said. Diane frowned. "What is that?" "Just a note," Nathan said, and he pocketed it. He left before anyone could see the tremor in his hands. The letter was short. Henry's handwriting. Shaky but deliberate. "If you're reading this, it means I've finally outlived my patience with them. The $6.9 million wasn't my gift. It's their test. The real inheritance is buried beneath their greed. I taught you to look deeper. Do that one last time. At the bottom, coordinates." The next morning, Nathan drove to Henry's old property. The vineyard he'd run for 50 years before Diane and Richard sold it behind his back. The place was overgrown, wild, silent. Nathan followed the coordinates with a shovel in hand until he reached the oak tree, the one where Henry used to sit with him as a kid, where Henry would say, "Roots remember what people forget." Nathan dug. Metal hit dirt, an old lockbox. Inside, documents, flash drives, and a note. "They think they inherited money, but they inherited debt. The company accounts, the shell corporations all trace back to the trust I built under their names. Every dollar they touch will sink them deeper. You, however, hold the release clause, the one document that clears it all or condemns them completely. Beneath that, folded neatly, was a signed amendment to the will. It transferred everything, the vineyard, the trust, the remaining estates, all to Nathan, effective only upon verification of greed. They'd verified it in that room, laughing as they humiliated him. Nathan didn't rush. He waited. He let them spend. Claire bought a mansion, a yacht, started some influencer company that burned through money like it was nothing. Diane and Richard poured millions into renovations, cars, vacations, living like royalty. 6 months later, the audits began. Fake corporations, unpaid taxes, misused trust funds. The $6.9 million wasn't a gift. It was a trap. A liability designed to collapse under its own weight, and at the bottom of every paper trail, every fraudulent signature, was one name: Diane's. The call came late one night. Diane's voice was thin, hysterical. "They're freezing our accounts. The lawyer won't answer. They're saying it's fraud." Nathan listened in silence. "You," she hissed. "You did this." "I read the letter," Nathan said. "Grandpa warned you. You just never listened." And before hanging up, he added, "You told me to earn my own. I did." 3 weeks later, their mansion was listed for sale. Claire's business folded overnight. Richard disappeared into bankruptcy hearings. Nathan bought the vineyard back, under his name this time, restored it, replanted the vines Henry had once tended with his bare hands. When the harvest came, Nathan sent 1 crate of wine to his parents' new address. The label read, "Roots Remember." That was 2 years ago. After we put out the fire and the police took Claire away, Nathan stood looking at the vines she'd tried to burn. Some were charred, but most were fine, roots still strong. "You knew this might happen," I said. He nodded. "They always try to burn what they can't have." "You pressing charges?" Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "They've already burned themselves down. This was just them realizing it." He walked back toward the main building, stopped, turned back. "My grandfather used to say that roots remember what people forget," Nathan said. "I think he meant that some things survive no matter how hard people try to destroy them. You know, people think inheritance is about money, about who gets what when someone dies. But the real inheritance? That's about what grows from the ashes after everything else burns away." Nathan's family tried to strip him of everything: his worth, his dignity, his place at the table. They laughed while doing it, thought they'd won. But his grandfather knew something they didn't, that the people who try to make you feel small are usually the ones standing on lies, and eventually, lies collapse. The worst kind of fire isn't the kind you can see. It's the kind that burns inside families. The kind where love gets used as a weapon, where worth gets measured in dollars and disappointments. Those fires don't go out easy. They smolder for years, eating away at the people who tend them. But here's what I've learned in 18 years of fighting fires. Sometimes the strongest things are the ones that look burned, the ones that everyone counted out, the ones that should have died but didn't. Those roots, they remember. They grow deeper. They come back stronger. If your family ever made you feel like you weren't enough, like you were the mistake they had to tolerate, listen to me. That's not your truth. That's their fire. And you don't have to keep standing in it. You can walk away, plant your own roots, build something they never believed you could build, and when they try to burn it down, because they can't stand watching you grow, you'll be strong enough to survive it, because roots remember, and so do you. Stay safe out there.